Chapter 4898. Jian Wushuang slowly shook his head, and said softly, "It's a pity that I don't want to be above the realm of heaven." In the next moment, he suddenly blasted out hundreds of millions of pure Yanli Huamang from the palms he clenched, and directly wrapped it to the black-robed Dian Immortal. He didn't even make any sound. The entire skeleton fairy was directly swallowed by Huamang, and then suddenly turned into a fan. Dian Immortal, the initial stage of a generation, died in Jian Wushuang's hands in this way, without any suspense. Retracting his palm, Jian Wushuang let out a sigh. It seems that everything that happened to the other party still has lingering fears. He is almost certain that if he is not an immortal body, then this time he will inevitably die. The means to be able to derive the way of heaven and let the way of heaven be one's own use is really terrible. If it weren't for the immortal body, beyond the limit of the heavenly Tao that the black-robed Dian Immortal could control, the consequences would be unimaginable. Even if it is an ordinary Dian Immortal, I am afraid that if he is not careful, he will break his way and become a dead bone. Putting aside these terror methods, the body of the black-robed Dian Immortal is actually quite weak, almost not on the same level as Chang Duoling before. This is also why Jian Wushuang can easily destroy him after breaking the shackles of his heavenly way. Fortunately, he finally succeeded. Taking a deep breath, Jian Wushuang secretly decided that he would try not to be alone anymore. At the same time, he was even more wary of Dian Immortal. As expected, those who were able to reach Dian Immortal were by no means mediocre. After beheading the black-robed Dian Immortal, Jian Wushuang turned around and saw the little emperor in black uniform. He smiled tiredly, and said, "Brother Jian." Jian Wushuang's brows condensed, and he directly stretched out his hand to blast a beam of light at him. The little emperor did not dodge and stood still. A violent beam of Yanli light passed him, blasted behind him, and directly crushed several Yangxian into powder. "Be careful, the war has just begun." Jian Wushuang flew up to him and said condensedly. Xiao Dijun nodded. "What's the next step?" He didn't speak, but looked at the fairy formation with the first arm ox with a hole in the back. There is already an extremely powerful force blooming. Along with the emergence of Yang Li, there is a steady stream of Yang Xian coming out of the fairy formation. The battle that was already at a disadvantage, with the opening of the first heaven gate, fell into an extreme disadvantage. Roughly counting, nearly 100 Yangxian joined the battle again, and countless Dingxiu also stepped out of the fairy formation and joined the battle. Just a fairy formation conveyed such a terrifying background, and then 4 fairy formations opened at the same time. I am afraid that this battle will have nearly 1,000 fairy formations fighting. I'm going to destroy the immortal formations. From now on, you will be by Daiking's side, don't leave even one step. Jian Wushuang asked. However, Xiao Dijun did not leave, but a soft sword in Yi Heng's hand. "It is better to follow you instead of following him." After he finished speaking, he directly lifted his sword and flew towards the arm ox. Jian Wushuang was helpless, then he slapped on the soles of his feet and rushed directly to the first fairy formation. Not long after they left, the place where the black-robed Dian Immortal had disappeared, quietly condensed an uneven phantom. A steady stream of Yangxian and Dingxiu walked out of the immortal formation, then looked at the chaotic void and quickly joined the battle. In this kind of extremely unequal battle, even if one side has a few more geniuses, it is a decisive victory. If it hadn't been for Daiking's shelter in the rear, the more than 100 Yangxians brought by Gongziqian would have been swallowed. Right now, there are still more than 60 fairy gods miraculously remaining, and the army of gods born with the arm ox has suffered heavy casualties, almost losing more than half, leaving only more than 100. But this kind of situation, after opening in the fairy formation hole and continuously joining Yangxian and Dingxiu, there has been a subtle change. Even Di Qing felt an inexplicable pressure. Almost the entire battlefield of the Six-Day Realm was defeated by him alone. As long as he was defeated, the Six-Day Realm behind him would be swallowed instantly. It has been only a few decades since the second true life fell. The current ditching is almost still in a weakening stage, and it is already a bit difficult to resist the offensive of hundreds of immortals. At the same time, he was still worried that the black-robed Dian Immortal, who had disappeared without a trace from the beginning, would give him a thunderous blow. But he was still clenching his teeth, and the remaining 60 Yangxians surrounded him, barely able to share some of the offensive. And young Master Qian, who had originally planned to hide, also joined the battle under consideration from all sides, closely following Di Qing's back, barely lying directly on his body. Di Qing's gaze is solemn, looking forward through the broken void. There, a figure with a figure like a sword, carrying endless power, broke through the void and swept towards the first fairy formation. The Armox, which was originally sleeping with closed eyes, seemed to feel threatened, and all 6 huge eyes that looked like big sun opened, looking at the sudden figure. Roar! The sound waves that could shatter the void exploded. Nyo raised that unimaginable head, opened the abyss and swallowed Jian Wushuang. Under this mouth, even the void was dimmed, but Jian Wushuang did not evade and was swallowed by it resolutely. In the next moment, thousands of magnificent flowers suddenly burst into the huge mouth of Armia's closed abyss. A hint of doubt flashed through its 6 giant eyes, and then they all burst open. Nyo's extremely huge head was also blown away by the most magnificent beam of light. As if the sky had fallen, it couldn't even make a mournful sound, and the whole head became dust in the void. Jian Wushuang glanced back, then moved on. With just one sword, destroyed an Armox that needed more than a dozen immortals to barely restrain it. This was an unimaginable scene. This horrifying scene was caught in the eyes of dozens of immortals, and then they all retreated tacitly, and then joined the chaotic battle. With the soles of his feet resting on Armia's boundless back, Jian Wushuang slowly exhaled a turbid breath. In front of him, there was a steady stream of violent soldiers. Uncountable fairy patterns are circulating, which is the most basic source to ensure the endurance of the fairy formation and provide the normal transmission of the fairy formation. It is conceivable that this transfer is enough to send nearly 10,000 top repairs. Jian Wushuang quickly stepped forward, facing the continual retreat of the top repair army. He kicked it directly with a powerful kick. Go back to me wherever you came from. Please remember the domain name of the book's first publication. Mobile version reading URL. Chapter 4899. Under his foot, hundreds of Ding Xiu were caught off guard, and were directly kicked back into the immortal formation. Damn! There was a Yangxian who didn't even have time to say a whole sentence, and was directly chopped into palm-sized pieces by Jian Wushuang's sword. All Yangxian and Ding Xiu stepped back subconsciously, looking at the god-killing Yangxian in front of them. They felt depressed inexplicably. Jian Wushuang didn't intend to talk nonsense at all, but raised his foot again, kicking another wave of Yangxian and Ding Xiu into the fairy formation. At the same time, he stretched out his hand, his 5 fingers joined together and turned into a big palm to bombard down. The immortal formation formed by the condensation of nearly 10,000 immortal patterns could not withstand this power at all, and it collapsed and shattered directly. As the first fairy formation shattered, there were only 3 of the original 4 fairy formations. The Armox without a head also fell, like a broken heaven, sinking into the broken void. Jian Wushuang stood in the void and turned his gaze to the other 3 fairy formations slowly opening. Such an immortal formation, when stopped in time, has violently attacked nearly 100 immortals and countless top repairs. If it is not prevented, the 6-day realm will be destroyed directly. So Jian Wushuang did not hesitate at all. He directly took Xiao Dejuan and rushed to the next fairy formation. At this moment, the front door of the entire 6-day realm was completely plunged into chaos. Even with the guarantee of the truth, the 6-day realm can't be defended. Originally, there were only more than 60 fairy cultivators, but at this moment, there were only less than 30 elders. However, the original fairy cultivator added fresh blood, and there were nearly 400 fairy elders. Moreover, the army of immortals had already understood the importance and terrifying nature of Di Qing. It was no longer a mad forward of the brain, but let the later top repairers take the lead, consuming the vital power of the 6-day realm. Young Master Qian's face was pale. In his opinion, the 6 heavens realm was completely unguarded, and he was already considering how to escape back to his ethereal Xianju as quickly as possible. Chen Qing was fighting battle beside Diqing, and obviously he couldn't get out. At this moment, several streamers rushed from the direction of the 6-day realm. It was Chuanqiu, Kui Jing, Zhao Ting, Wei Liujia, and a bald man who was as strong as a mountain. They all looked solemn when they saw this scene. Chun Qiu even flew directly to Chen Qing and said with a deep face, "Why don't you notify us of such a big thing?" Chen Qing touched the blood on his face and said anxiously, "What happened is too urgent, it is impossible to get out of it, even if I want to go back and call you, there is no way." Chun Qiu's complexion eased slightly, and then he looked at the turbulent situation, and when he was about to speak again, an impatient roar resounded, "Where is my lord? Where did the lord go? Is it here too?" It was Feng Shan, the bald man who made the trembling roar, and he roared with anxious expression. "Isn't this Rama the guy outside the temple of brothers Pingjian?" Chen Qing was a little puzzled. The bald man Feng Shan rushed to Chen Qing and said anxiously, "You must know where my adult is, right? Tell me, I will never let the adult suffer any harm." Upon hearing this, Chen Qing stretched out his finger to the location of the three-armed oxen far away. "It's there." Before he could finish his sentence, Feng Shan directly soared out. Although he was very strong, his actions were also extremely agile, rushing towards Jian Wushuang's position with agility. "It's really a Rama." Chen Qing shook his head helplessly. In the spring and autumn period, Kui Jing and others were also going to help Jian Wushuang, but he was held back by him. "Brother Jian is not too dangerous for the time being, let's alleviate some pressure on this adult together now." Seeing Diqing with 10 wings blooming behind him, Chuanqiu didn't say much, and directly called out 8 armed puppets with angry eyes, and guarded Diqing together. Kui Jing also joined the battle immediately, carrying an 8-foot mysterious stick, and fighting side by side with Chuanqiu. Wei Liujia, who hadn't fully recovered, joined the battle without hesitation. He thought that being able to defend Jian Wushuang on the bottom line of the 6-day realm would be regarded as helping Jian Wushuang. Zhao Ting also gritted his teeth slightly, and after a moment of hesitation, joined the battle. With Chuanqiu, Kui Jing, and several Yangxian guarding him, Diqing felt the pressure on his body instantly loosened, and he was able to take a breather. The calmness of spring and autumn, Kui Jing's boldness, Chen Qing's sophisticated and smooth, and Wei Lujia's seemingly gentle but fast and deadly are all suitable for this chaotic situation. Their matching with each other greatly offset the wave after wave of impact, and even Di Qing secretly affirmed them. And as they joined the battle in the spring and autumn period, thousands of streams emerged from the 6-day realm. They are the last remaining immortals and top repairs in the 6-day realm. They were all practicing enlightenment in the Luanjian dojo in the far south of Shaogushan, but now they are all here, and none of Dingxiu and Yangxian are absent. Stepping into this chaotic battlefield, none of Yangxian and Dingxiu said a word, silently greeting their destiny. In some ways, this is indeed a fateful battle. The sword repairs all drew out their true swords, and the top repairs released their most chewy power. Less than 10 Yangxian took the lead to rush into the chaotic battlefield, kill the enemy, and be killed. This is the purest war, and it is also the largest war since the establishment of the Great Division. There were nearly 600 immortals and an innumerable number of top repairers who participated in the war, and immortals continued to join the war. This is also a war between emperors, which includes 5 or even 6 emperors. This war was also a turning point that was completely torn apart between them. The situation that was originally one-sided fell into a stalemate again. This made the pale-faced young master Qian somewhat relieved, and he was also in shock. Under the seat of the little emperor, Sun Yang, where did these guys who are so powerful that they can even turn the tide of the battle on their own come from? Naturally, no one can answer Gong Ziqian. If you want to let him know that these guys who can turn the tide don't even obey the orders of Xiao Dijuan, I am afraid he will be completely shocked again. To restore the originally decadent situation again, the chaotic battle is even more chaotic than before. If there is color in the void, I am afraid that countless blood can dye it deep red. Immortal Yang is constantly dying, and the ancestor-level top repairers have fallen and died in batches, and even their bodies can't be preserved. This broken void is the burial ground of the immortal and Dingxiu at this moment. Please remember the domain name of the book's first publication. Mobile version reading URL. Chapter 4900. Dead Fairyland, Pile of Bones. Yangxian Melee, Top Repair Deadly Battle. Looking around, The broken void is full of celestial bones. And this situation will only intensify, and will not end, because at the source of the war, only one of the 4 fairy formations was destroyed. There are also 3 fairy formations, which are about to open and enter the stage of violent soldiers. Once the remaining 3 teleportation fairy formations are opened, everything will enter an irreversible road. So Jian Wushuang would never let that scene appear. After destroying the first fairy formation, he immediately rushed to the second fairy formation. He wants to contain this battle from the source. Now the whole situation is under the protection of Di Qing, barely in a stalemate state, but this state will not last long, so Jian Wushuang has to fight quickly and then return to defense. With nearly 10,000 fairy patterns suddenly turning, the second fairy formation and the third fairy formation are about to open. Jian Wushuang's figure has quietly arrived in front of the second armyu. Holding an invisible sword, his whole figure is like the same Wushuang divine sword, and he slashes towards the giant head of armyu without fear. Because the arm cow's body is too huge, even several times larger than some ordinary heavens, this also caused its slow movement, and if it encounters a strong enemy, it is basically waiting to die. Facing Jian Wushuang, this second arm ox also opened a huge mouth in the abyss and swallowed it into its belly. The same scene was staged again. The billions of magnificent Huamang exploded Armnyo's head, and finally turned its entire head into powder. Jian Wushuang reached the top with his sword and looked at the huge immortal formation on Armius' back, which had been completely opened. Already, the formation of Yangxian has begun to step out of the fairy formation and rush to the battlefield. But in just a few dozen breaths of time, in the broken void battlefield, more than 100 immortals were added again, and there is a steady stream of immortals coming out of the teleporting immortal array. The 6-day realm is in danger. Originally there were more than 300 immortal soldiers on the battlefield, and with the addition of fresh blood, they were approaching 500. Jian Wushuang was holding an invisible sword, and he came to the second fairy formation in a flash. He wanted to close the fairy formation in the shortest possible time. Only this time, it was not as smooth as the first time. Almost at the same time, Yangxian, who was constantly walking out of the immortal formation, became vigilant for an instant and surrounded Jian Wushuang. "Are you the remnant of the 6 heavens realm?" A clear voice sounded, followed by a young Yangxian wearing bright silver Chenya silver armor and holding a Zhongshu silver gun, walking out of the immortal formation, looking at Jian Wushuang proudly. Jian Wushuang glanced at him obliquely, and directly used the 7th formula of Luyun grass sword style. The grass leaves turn green. Suddenly, the infinite sword intent rushed out from the blade, like a green grass leaf, flying forward. The young man Yangxian's eyes lit up, and his competitive heart suddenly rose. He took a sudden step forward, pointing Zhongzu's silver spear directly at the void, then put his palm against the spear body, and used a straightforward. This seemingly unremarkable thorn, but carrying the momentum of the whale swallowing Tianhe, broke through Jian Wushuang's Luyun grass sword style. At this moment, even Xiao Dijuan, who was standing beside Jian Wushuang, was shocked to the extreme. This was the first time that there was an immortal in the same realm, and Jian Wushuang's sword intent was broken from the front, without much effort. Jian Wushuang was also slightly surprised. The young man with silver armor and silver spear in front of him, Yangxian, was able to find a way to deal with Luyun grass sword in the first place. It was indeed remarkable. The whole spectrum of Luyun grass sword style starts from the 7th style, from simple to complex, and the sword intent contained in it also moves closer to the general trend. And that young man Yangxian broke his face with one of the simplest points, and broke through the 7th type of grass leaf Shiqing. "Yes, you can be your opponent." Young Yangxian's eyes lit up, and he was ready to fight Jian Wushuang on the spot. But Jian Wushuang didn't want to fight him. His goal was the immortal formation. Xiao Dijun understood what he was thinking, and directly held the sword and confronted the young man Yangxian. A hint of doubt flashed in the young man Yangxian's eyes, and then he seemed to think of something. "You are the Sun Yang?" Little Dijuan ignored him and directly released the immortal style, attracting all the eyes of Yangxian. "All immortals Yang listen to my orders and try their best to intercept young Master Yang." He suddenly raised the silver spear in his hand, and the earth-shaking voice echoed in the broken void. At this moment, nearly 100 Yanxians gathered around. Jian Wushuang no longer stayed, and directly jumped into the immortal formation that originally wanted the immortal pattern to flow. The young man Yangxian, who was fighting against Xiao Dijun, looked at this scene and immediately guessed his intentions, and hurriedly said in a loud voice, "Don't let me froze, all try to protect the immortal formation." Suddenly, a crowd of Yangxian chased Jian Wushuang again. This kind of immortal formation built with 10,000 immortal patterns is quite solid. Even the full blow of dozens of immortals may not be able to break the defense, unless Dian Immortal takes action, otherwise the immortal formation will circulate steadily. However, Jian Wushuang could easily destroy the immortal formation, so the only thing he was worried about was being blocked. It seemed that the more worried he would come, when he appeared in front of the immortal formation, 60 or 70 Yanxians surrounded him, and thousands of top repairers also approached him. This scene is extremely tricky. Just when Jian Wushuang was about to rush out of the encirclement desperately, a shocking shout rang out. "My lord, Fengshan's is late." Even Jian Wushuang, when he heard the popping sound, his eardrum felt a little painful. When he reacted, he saw a body like a hot meteor, shattering the void, and resolutely rushed into the encirclement. There were more than 10 Yangxian who couldn't dodge, and they were kicked out of distance on the spot. Boom! The entire back of the Armox was under this huge earthquake, and there were cracks in an instant. The original encirclement was all in chaos, and the figure that came from a far distance was disoriented and climbed up from the back of the Armox. Jian Wushuang's eyes twitched. "Why are you here?" "My lord, I really am an adult." Fengshan knew that you were here to him. Fortunately, he was not late. The bald man Fengshan ran over excitedly. Jian Wushuang was helpless, and when he saw that the encirclement was messy, he said in a condensed voice, "Prepare to rush out with me. As long as you rush out, you can follow me from now on." Fengshan takes the order, "You sir, please look forward to it," Fengshan said excitedly. As his voice fell, his already sturdy figure instantly expanded several times, and his whole body was like a god, full of captivating momentum. Then, like a small-arm cow, he rushed forward boldly. In the next moment, all the overwhelming power was poured on his body, and countless terrible radiant energy was scattered everywhere. Please remember the domain name of the book's first publication. Mobile version reading URL. Chapter 4901. Even Jian Wushuang saw this scene, his brows jumped. This was a full blow from dozens of immortals, and countless offensives from the top repairers, all fell on him. Even if it was an alien beast known for its physical hardness, it could not be supported. But the next moment, a shocking scene appeared. Fengshan suddenly yelled, his sturdy figure like a peak doubled suddenly, and at the same time, the thick blue veins of his arm rose up, and his skin turned dark blue. All Yangxian and Dinxius offensives seemed to have failed, and they didn't even leave any traces on him. "Big, sir, hurry up." He looked back at Jian Wushuang and roared, already doing his best. Jian Wushuang didn't say much. The invisible sword in his hand was shining to the extreme. Wushuang Kendo, Xingyihu Haijianyi, the second style. River. As if hanging down from the void dome, with endless sword intent, every sword intent reflected the bright stars, and then swept through. Under this sword, there were nearly 1,000 top repairers, more than 30 Yangxian were strangled on the spot, and countless people were hit hard. Fengshan was stunned and watched this scene in disbelief. The encirclement was also completely disrupted. Live well. After Jian Wushuang said such a word to Fengshan, he stood directly in front of the immortal formation where the fairy patterns flowed. In the immortal formation, there was a steady stream of Yangxian and Dingxiu emerging, but they were all kicked back by Jian Wushuang, and then he stretched out his hand to release the immortal pose. After the battle with Chang Duoling, all of Jian Wushuang's ancestral arts, immortal style, and kendo were tempered. Therefore, the immortal style he released at this moment is more majestic and vast than before. Xian style, a little mountain and river. With Jian Wushuang as the center, hundreds of thousands of miles of void in his whole body have become his domain, in which he can mobilize and transform any matter. A sacred peak directly shattered the void, pressed down, and directly crushed the suppression of the second fairy formation. So far, only 2 of the 4 fairy formations are left. The immortal formation collapsed, and the infinite strength and radiance scattered all over. This scene was caught by nearly 100 immortals, and then they all rushed towards Jian Wushuang like they were crazy. Bong Shan grinned in pain. Dogs, you want to run after hitting Grandpa? Jian Wushuang didn't stop. After destroying the second fairy formation, he went straight to the third fairy formation. Seeing this, the young man Yangxian who was fighting against the little emperor directly shot the little emperor back, and his figure instantly chased in the direction of Jian Wushuang. But then, a sacred mountain-like figure blocked their way. If you want to catch up, just step over from the master. Fengshan's eyes were also extremely arrogant, and said disdainfully. The young man Yangxian raised his brows, and pointed his silver spear at him. Step over him for me. Rumble. Nearly 100 immortals, and countless Ding Xiu Yima Pingchuan stepped over. Looking at Fengshan deeply embedded in the back of the arm oxen, the young man Yangxian shook his head. What a strange request. The third fairy formation has been opened, and while tens of thousands of immortal patterns are circulating, one by one immortal comes out of it. Now there are only 2 of the immortal formations destroyed by Jian Wushuang, and the chaotic battlefield has also begun to stalemate. He came to the third arm ox in an instant. This time he did not kill the arm ox, but jumped straight to the third fairy formation. Just as he was about to slash down with a sword, there was a sudden piercing sound behind him. Jian Wushuang was forced to turn his head and resist. Young Yangxian's Zhongshu silver spear then pierced it, and the extremely violent Yanli exploded. Under this shot, Jian Wushuang was forced to retreat half a step. I thought you were plotting something, but you wanted to destroy the fairy formation? The spear slanted, and he was arrogant. It's not impossible to destroy the fairy formation, but if you want to defeat me first, I will let you go. How about? Boring. Jian Wushuang retracted his gaze, then turned and walked towards the fairy formation step by step. Youth Yangxian's eyes narrowed. You look down on me? As he said, his right hand was in the shape of a bow, and the arm holding the silver spear raised up to a full circle, and then he threw the silver spear fiercely as if shooting the sun. Jian Wushuang did not look back, although the spear arrived behind him. The next moment, a bull-like figure rushed into the encirclement, and then resolutely dealt with the silver gun that flew out. Like the dark yellow color of the earth spewing out, forming an insurmountable barrier in front of Fengshan. That shot that seemed to be able to penetrate the sky, when it hit this dark yellow layer of genius barrier, it turned out to be difficult to make a few steps. Fengshan roared wildly, the soles of his feet plowed a deep gully on Nyo's back, and then his arms shook, and the silver gun flew upside down. Good fellow, it's really thick and tight. Catch the silver spear that flew back with one hand. The young man Yangxian raised his eyebrows and looked at him. Make away, my target is not you. No matter who your goal is, defeat Lao Tzu first. Fengshan said without letting out a spit. It's really stupid. The young man Yangxian shook his head, and the silver spear in his hand burst into bloom in an instant, and the true soul of 1,000 silver spears emerged from behind him, and then all shot towards Fengshan. The void collapsed, and the true soul of each silver spear was violent to the extreme. If it all falls on him, I am afraid it will be overwhelming. Just when thousands of silver spears were shooting down, Fengshan, who was still driving with a dead fish, was suddenly pulled over by a force. Rumble. The arm ox wailed, and 1,000 spears merged into one, and a deep ravine of billions of meters was cut directly on its back, so that the void was shaken. My lord. Fengshan was surprised. After releasing him, Jian Wushuang said in a solid voice, "Follow me, don't take risks." He nodded heavily, calm, and followed closely. The fairy formation is close at hand, but it is still extremely tricky to have dozens of Yangxian guards. Just when Jian Wushuang was about to release the strongest sword desperately, the young man Yangxian, who was like a dogskin plaster, also rushed over with a gun. Mouse, come and fight with this seat. If you win, it will be fine for me to give you this fairy formation. Jian Wushuang looked back at him and said calmly, within 2 swords, you will lose. 2 swords. It's really a big tone. Young Yangxian pointed the silver spear in his hand directly at him, with an extremely arrogant expression. I am invincible. After Jian Wushuang heard it, he quietly curled up his mouth, as if he had heard the best joke. Even Feng Shan on the side couldn't help grinning openly. Please remember the domain name of the book's first publication. Mobile version reading URL. Chapter 4902. Even though what he said is true and invincible in the same realm, there is no possibility of winning against Jian Wushuang. You know, before the beginning of this battle, Jian Wushuang was enough to fight the third-rank Dian Immortal, and the Nine Heavens Immortal Monarch often made orders. In other words, they are no longer equal opponents. Jian Wushuang is sure to defeat them within the two swords. Why, don't you believe what this seat says? Young Yangxian raised his brows and asked coldly. Of course I believe that if it is on weekdays, I might still compete with you, but not now. Jian Wushuang glanced at him and said, then turned around. Feng Shan tilted his head and spat, and the fairy body doubled. Upon seeing this, the young man Yangxian became angry. Dare to ignore this seat? The next moment, he held the gun directly and flew straight to Jian Wushuang's heart. Jian Wushuang frowned slightly, and just as he was about to give him a thunderous blow, an extremely strange aura suddenly appeared. Because that breath appeared too fast, it was almost impossible for Jian Wushuang to react, and appeared on his back. Jie, guy, you can't escape this time. That weird aura condensed into a black robe figure. It was huge. Two black lights burst out from its eye sockets, and death aura rose to the sky. Jian Wushuang's eyes condensed. This black robe figure was exactly the black robe Dian Immortal he had killed before. But at this moment, he actually appeared again. The black robe Dian Immortal seemed to have not suffered any severe damage, and two huge bone palms stretched out from under the black robe, directly grasping Jian Wushuang, and then dragging it directly into the fairy formation. Because everything that happened was so fast, even when Jian Wushuang reacted, he was already dragged into the fairy formation. Feng Shan also reacted instantly, and went straight to the fairy formation. Courageous. The young man Yangxian was furious, and then moved forward with his gun, and plunged into the fairy formation. The immortal patterns flowed impressively, but they absorbed their figures in an instant, without knowing where to transmit them. The chaos on the battlefield remained, but Yangxian did not notice this change. With the complete opening of the third and fourth fairy formations, the entire void battlefield has completely entered the most tragic and grand stage. Immortals continue to come out of the last two immortal formations to join the battle, and only one immortal formation can make more than 300 immortals. So far, nearly 1,000 Yangxian rushed to the six-day realm. Standing on the back of the dead arm ox, Xiao Dejuan holding a long sword, staring at this scene, the void Gangfeng violently tore everything. The complete destruction of the six-day realm is a foregone conclusion. As the fairy patterns in the fairy formation flowed, it seemed that a long, long time passed, and it seemed that only a moment later, Jian Wushuang was teleported to a heaven. The weird black robe Dian Immortal holding him has long since disappeared, as if he had never appeared before. The soles of the feet fall firmly on the ground, and when you look into the eyes, the dead grass and the dry river area are the main colors of this heaven. The sky was incomparably chaotic, and the dead energy was so thick that it even covered and swallowed the escaped power. Standing under the sky, an extremely strange and inexplicable atmosphere was quietly permeating. Just when Jian Wushuang was about to leave to check, Feng Shan's huge figure fell from the sky, and fell directly to the ground, and a dog came to chew on mud. Ouch! Feng Shan wailed, rubbing his head, and got up from the ground. Immediately afterwards, another fairy wearing silver armor and holding a silver spear descended from the sky, with an air of arrogance and doubt. Where is this place? Jian Wushuang glanced at him, but didn't plan to do anything. To come to such a strange and inexplicable place, it is imperative to thoroughly investigate it. Bong Shan then said, "My lord, this won't be the nest of the guy who dragged you here." "It's very likely." He nodded, then looked into the distance. Pieces of dead lion grass connected directly to the sky. On the cracked and dilapidated earth, there were so many huge graves, almost uncountable. There were even many dark and shabby coffins standing diagonally on the ground. Which exudes. The pale white spirit banners fluttered and rustled with the violent wind, which was indescribably desolate and strange. Under this investigation, Jian Wushuang inexplicably felt that this weird and inexplicable universe was extremely similar to a place in his memory. That place is the Refining God sect in the Void universe, which is where he is undercover. Shenzong refining the corpse is used as a combat puppet. As long as the disciple of the sect can refine any corpse, it is much stronger than the Void in the same realm. It is precisely because of this that the divine refining sect is in the entire Void. The universe can be regarded as a super sect. And right now, in this desolate, dilapidated, and strange heaven, the death aura contained in it was even 100 times, or even 1,000 times thicker than the starfield of Refining God sect. So much so that Jian Wushuang began to wonder whether there was a wicked and evil sect in this heavenly domain similar to that of the Refining God sect. Just when there was no clue, a strange laugh was completely resounded in the entire heavenly plane. Yes, I thought it would be a great opportunity to swallow one, but now I send 2 of them to the door, and this seat will reluctantly swallow all of you. With the sound resounding, a huge face of billions of feet gradually appeared above the originally chaotic void. This huge face is like a skin tightened on a skull, with a pointed mouth and bulging cheeks, alive and ugly like a hairless monkey. Despite the great change in face, Jian Wushuang recognized this huge face at a glance, the black-robed Dayan immortal who died under his hand. The young man Yangxian on the side frowned when he saw this scene, and then he shouted loudly, "Yuyun, if you don't go to the 6-day realm for a battle, now what do you return to your own heaven?" Above the sky, the huge face condensed, and then seeing this scene, I couldn't help showing a smile. Who am I? It turned out to be the great heaven official of Shuyang. How about it? Are you satisfied with my heaven? Youth Yangxian frowned slightly. Stop talking nonsense, and quickly follow me to the 6-day realm. No problem, but you always have to eat before you can work, right? The huge face showed a strange and inexplicable smile. He suddenly raised the silver spear in his hand. Yuyun, what do you mean? It's not interesting. In fact, what I want to say is that since you have also come to my sight, it's better to let the flow take its course as my nourishment and fill my stomach. The giant face suddenly laughed strangely, and the endless life of death fell from the sky, like a chain of millions of feet, directly bound to Jian Wushuang and others. Please remember the domain name of the book's first publication. Mobile version reading URL. Chapter 4903. The young man Yangxian, who was called Shuyang, his eyes suddenly sank. Yuyun, you are looking for death. In the next moment, the true soul of the silver spear, condensed from the purest derivation power, emerged from the back of the sun, reaching a height of 10 million feet. When those chains were tied down, the most magnificent brilliance suddenly burst out. When the two collided, a huge force that shook the sky and the earth completely agitated, making the chaotic sky unbearable and shattered. The true soul of the silver spear instantly shredded the infinite chains that had been entangled, and went straight to the huge face without any reduction. Chirp! Like a hot knife cutting butter, the real soul of the silver gun completely crushed the huge face and turned it into powder. Small bugs. Xu Yang snorted coldly, not afraid, as if he didn't put the black-robed Dayan immortal in his eyes. Jie, stay here. The sky collapsed, and a black-robed figure appeared quietly, his arms slowly opened, and endless death came out from under his black robe. Here, I am the only way of heaven, any immortal who tries to break will receive the most severe punishment. With him as the center, the thick and deadly aura transformed into an enchantment, besieging Jian Wushuang, Fengshan, and Shuyang. Damn the dog, how dare you take this seat at the moment of the war? Shuyang gritted his teeth. Sir, shall we rush out? Fengshan asked Jian Wushuang, who was beside him, obviously also a little nervous. Jian Wushuang didn't speak, and in the midst of this big array, he smelled something unusual. The black-robed Dayan immortal that was supposed to be beheaded by him survived without knowing what secret method he used, and relying on this weird heaven, rearranged a dead heaven array to completely trap them. Just as he said, in this dead day formation, he is the only way of heaven, trying to trap a few immortals to death is just the simplest thing. But he far underestimated the variables, and this variable is Jian Wushuang. He was able to kill rank 3 Dayan immortal with his own power. Facing this weakest Dayan immortal, Jian Wushuang had a big chance of winning, even if the current situation was extremely unfavorable for him. Xu Yang's complexion was ugly, and he naturally realized the troubles of Yuyun, and it would be difficult to escape from here. Just when he was about to let go of his life, Jian Wushuang moved. He didn't release Wushuang's swordsmanship, nor did he release ancestral skills, he just stepped forward peacefully. Standing right in the center of this dead heaven immortal formation, Haipao Dian Immortal stepped back unconsciously when he saw this, the red light in his eyes dodged somewhat. He has an inexplicable sense of fear and crisis for this young man who gave him a thunderous blow earlier. If it hadn't been for a life-saving secret to escape a catastrophe, he would have been completely destroyed now. I can kill you the first time, and naturally I can kill you the second time. Let us leave now. I promise to let you go. Jian Wushuang's calm voice resounded, and he came to Haipao Dianxian, no more than 10 feet between the two. Otherwise, Chang Dueling's end is your end. His voice was not loud, but it exploded in Xu Yang's mind. A fairy dared to threaten a fairy face to face. And there is no fear. Is this his illusion or is it real? Are you threatening me? Haipao Dianxian looked at him warily and said in a low voice. Not a threat, but a warning. Jian Wushuang said, and an invisible sword condensed in his palm. Haipao Dian swiftly retreated, and his ferocious voice resounded from his mouth. When you enter my heavenly realm, don't even want to leave, all become the nourishment for this seed. Ming stubborn. Jian Wushuang shook his head, and then he stretched out his hand a little, and a Tianhe derives out of the dead heaven immortal formation without any signs, and swept directly towards the black-robed Dian immortal. Xian style, a little mountain and river. Seeing this mysterious scene, black-robed Dian was shocked and hurried away. The Tianhe swept across, almost instantly tore a crack in the dead heavenly immortal array, and swept forward without any reduction. Why are you still stunned? Let's help together. Can't you be trapped here? Feng Shan drank, and then he soared. Xu Yang, who had recovered from the shock, his eyes sharpened again, facing the black-robed Dian immortal who had fled hurriedly, he exploded with a thunderous blow. The celestial death formation, which was originally not very strong, shattered directly, and the inexplicable completely disappeared. Haipao Dianxian's figure had long been scattered in the void, but his voice came over immediately. Damn fellows, prepare to accept the devouring of the dead fairy under my seat. As his voice fell, the originally dry and silent earth began to rumbling and trembling. The dead air thick as ink also spurted from the cracks in the earth. The huge tomb burst, the coffins shattered, and a series of figures, almost condensed from death, walked out of the ground, and then all soared above the sky. That every figure surrounded by death chi is all immortal. However, they are very different from the ordinary Yangxian, their whole body exudes lifelessness, their eyes are blood red, and the exposed immortal body is covered by the dark red meridians of the thickness of the fingers, which is to the extreme. Seeing this scene, Xu Yang, holding a silver gun, gritted his teeth and said, "This Yuyun is really evil. Why, do you know him?" Fengshan on the side looked at him and asked. Because he was on the same front for the time being, Jian Wushuang was not afraid that he would suddenly violently hurt people. Xu Yang took a deep breath and said, "I also heard a little bit earlier that Yuyun is a notorious evil immortal in this heaven. It uses the origin of Dingxiu and even the immortal to strengthen its own strength, and transform them into slaves for their own drive. Now it seems he is really as bad as the rumors." Xu Yang's words were true and did not seem to be false. Jian Wushuang himself had somewhat guessed some of the activities done by the black-robed Dian immortal. The death aura is so strong, it is absolutely inseparable from the origin of Dingxiu and the origin of Yangxian. For example, at the moment, the nearly 30 eternal immortals encircled from all sides have all annihilated the immortal source, only driven by death. Next, I'm going to pay attention. I heard that the servants under Yuyun's seat can absorb all attacks, even the source of immortality. Once they are entangled by them, it's not that interesting anymore. If you don't want to be like them, servant, do your best to break through here. Xu Yang reminded him, he looked like a big enemy. However, Jian Wushuang didn't worry at all, because he knew how to deal with this kind of method that could devour foreign objects to strengthen himself. Please remember the domain name of the book's first publication. Mobile version reading URL. Chapter 4904. It is not a minority to devour external forces to strengthen oneself, and to use this peculiar ability to do the top cultivation of one's own methods, or to grow immortals. This secret method is extremely powerful, and the only drawback is that the external force absorbed is too complicated and requires constant time to digest and purify. However, there is actually a simple and rude way to deal with cultivating immortals based on this secret method. That is to try to release one's own strength, burst the place to death. This method is indeed feasible, but if you are not careful, it is also very likely to be a way of giving away your head. So even if Yangxian knew this method, he wouldn't try it easily. Facing nearly 30 dead immortals, Xu Yang did not even dare to breathe. They don't feel pain. Even if their limbs are cut off in battle, they can release the last energy in the fairy body. Jie Jie, be swallowed with peace of mind, and become my servant. Haipao Dianxian Yuyun reappeared at the corner of the sky, watching this scene with gloomy eyes. Stupid guy. Jian Wushuang shook his head slightly. He didn't stop at the slightest, and directly urged his figure to face the 30 dead immortals resolutely. Ancestral technique, the gate of power. The magnificent Tianmen condensed, and then a giant finger to the sky came out from the Tianmen and smashed all the dead immortals. However, nearly 30 dead immortals did not evade, all opened their mouths and formed a strange suction force, and they actually swallowed this ancestral magic. After swallowing, the meridians on each of their immortal bodies exuded a strange huaza, which was extremely strange. The next moment, the war broke out. They all rushed madly at Jian Wushuang and the others, and soon surrounded them tightly. Seeing this scene of Yuyun, he smiled triumphantly, but his smile solidified before it even stretched out completely. Thousands of dazzling lights burst out of the encirclement, like a blazing sun that cannot be looked directly at, dazzling to the extreme. Then, the encirclement composed of nearly 30 dead immortals shattered, and nearly half of the dead immortals on the spot were turned into powder and could no longer be reborn. As the huamang flowed, there was a figure with xuanhe pattern flowing all over, holding an invisible sword and slowly walking out. Xu Yang and Fengshan followed closely, and their eyes were extremely surprised. I thought it would be a battle, but it ended in a flash. They only saw that Jian Wushuang completely released Yanli once, and then everything was over. The encirclement was blasted open, and only a dozen of the 30 dead immortals were left, and it was already out of the question. Seeing this, Yuyun didn't put down any cruel words, but instead just fled away. The remaining 10 or so dead immortals were all a little afraid and couldn't stop backing. But Jian Wushuang didn't plan to let them go. In this treacherous universe, any unstable factor was extremely important. Reaching out his hand to directly tie up all the dead immortals, and then crush them into powder, Jian Wushuang looked at the place where Yuyun disappeared. Then, he directly chased after him. Fengshan did not hesitate, and followed Jian Wushuang. Xu Yang looked at the disappearing back, his eyes were extremely hot, and a warlike mood surged in his heart. Yuyun's whereabouts disappeared extremely fast, but under Jian Wushuang's chase, he quickly noticed his escape route. This treacherous universe is considered to be a super-universe, and the entire universe plane is several times larger than the ordinary universe. It should have derived a lot of energy to the extreme, but at this moment it was replaced by a heavy death. With the continuous progress, the ruined hall and the huge tomb become the main color here. And Yuyun's ghostly figure flees to a huge black mountain range. Jian Wushuang arrived instantly. Looking at the lonely and strange mountain gate in front of him, he directly stretched out his hand. Suddenly, a kind of power that belonged to the suppression of the laws of heaven directly cut the Black Mountains in half. In an instant, endless death energy gushed out from the mountains, and the heavens and the earth changed. Even Jian Wushuang had to release his strength to protect himself from the erosion of death. As the Heishan Mountains were cut in half by Jian Wushuang, the scenes in it were exposed. Countless dark caves emerged, and there were ruined halls, which were extremely curious. Xu Yang and Fengshan arrived later, and they all frowned when they saw this scene. It seems that this should be the nest of Yuyun, Xu Yang said, his eyes solemn. Jian Wushuang did not speak, and went straight to the Heishan Mountains. Walking in the Black Mountains, countless caves spitting out death are all mysterious to the extreme. And it can be seen that the dead bones that have long lost their color collapse in front of the cave, and even the slightest wind blows them into a handful of fly ash. Here, it is completely purgatory. Jian Wushuang frowned, and he felt endless resentment in these lifelessness. As he kept walking forward, a palm suddenly protruded from a cave and grabbed his robe. Help! Reaching out his hand to stop Feng Shan, who was about to do it, Jian Wushuang turned and looked at the owner of the palm. It was an immortal, but it was already an immortal whose source was broken and resembling withered bones. As soon as the wind blows, it may fall apart. He opened his deflated eye sockets and was about to lose life. Jian Wushuang waved away a burst of power and enveloped him. Suddenly, he, who was originally like a dead bone, filled up in an instant, and even his cheeks were flushed. But this is just a return to light. His fairy source has been shattered, and his divine body has been messed up. If it hadn't been for Jian Wushuang to give him a strength, I am afraid he would have died just now. Thank you, sir, for allowing me to survive for a while. Na Yangxian let out a sigh, as if he already knew his situation. Jian Wushuang looked at him and asked, "Do you have anything to say?" He nodded, and pain flashed in his eyes. "Yes, what I want to tell the adults is that now you can go as far as you go. This is a complete scam. The so-called proving to be immortal, from the beginning to the end, is the old dog's lie. The price paid for this path of cultivation is really too great. I was originally a disciple of one of the most prosperous sects in the Blue Territory. Later, the master of the sect ran away angry, and the Lord sent 12 disciples of the clan to look for. I was one of those 12 disciples. Shong Qian, it is very difficult to travel through the heavens, and we have suffered some changes, so that our disciples are all separated. I can't return to the sect for a while, I can only live in the sky, but I never thought that all this would be the beginning of my nightmare." When he said this, there was still some horror in his eyes, as if it had been such a long time that he could not forget that day. Please remember the domain name of the book's first publication. Mobile version reading URL. Chapter 4905. Jian Wushuang didn't interrupt his memory, he felt that there was a certain connection in it. He breathed for a moment, and then continued, "I was alone, living in the heavens, and accidentally came to a heaven with plenty of power, where I saw an immortal who could reach the sky, opening a dojo and talking. After discussing the Tao, I also sat down and listened to the Tao, and soon I was immersed in his argument. He assured us that as long as he joins his seat, the talented top cultivation will surely be in the position of eternal immortality within 1 Chinese year. Even if it is not the top cultivation, it will give birth to immortal roots within several Chinese years. Reach unimaginable heights." Under that forum, there were more than 100,000 top repairs with him, and I was one of them. I thought this was a road with a bright future, but I never thought that this road of spiritual practice would make me unstoppable. Speaking of this, Jian Wushuang and others were already able to guess the outline. The person Ding Xiu spoke of must be the black-robed Dian immortal Yuyun. He wandered through the heavens and opened the dojo, attracting waves of Ding Xiu and even Yangxian to follow him. Then he was taken to his lair and absorbed the origin to strengthen himself. And the result was naturally as Jian Wushuang thought. After Yuyun brought them back here, he exposed his fangs, bound them, and absorbed the origin, but the process was more cruel. After the old dog brought us here, he no longer concealed it. He directly divided us into 3, 6, or 9 classes. The lowest rank, the base is very huge, there are tens of thousands. The old dog directly slaughtered them to death, made every monk into a soul amber, and distributed it to the middle rank monks for them. Absorb. And after the middle level monks were forced to ingest these soul ambers, their strength has been rapidly improved, but waiting for them are the highest level top cultivators. The old dog did the same, and slaughtered the middle level monks to death, and made the soul amber to provide the highest level top repairers. And I, because of my unique talents, was classified to the highest level, and I would consume 100,000 soul ambers every 10,000 years. During this period, my realm greatly increased and I successfully broke through to Yangxian, and there were more than 50 people in the same situation as me. However, what awaits us is something more cruel. Only then did I know that even if you become an immortal, it is just a pawn. There was a bit of bitterness in his eyes, and at the same time the fairy body was rapidly drying up and was about to die. After becoming a fairy, I thought I would have the ability to compete with him, but I didn't expect to return to the sky. We were all made into futons by more than 50 of us, sucking our fairy sauce day and night. This situation has lasted for several years, and all those who have been drained of the source of the immortal source have been made into slaves of the dead immortal for him to drive. And in order not to be made a slave by him, I frantically devoured the rest of the immortal source, and lived to the end, and I also escaped the devil's cave while he was leaving. I was thinking of staying away from this place completely, but I didn't expect that my Xianyuan was completely broken and there was no possibility of survival. If I didn't meet an adult today, I'm afraid I wouldn't be able to say all these things. When he said this, he was faint and dying. This old thing is really a beast. For his own sake, so many repairs have been lost in vain. It should be 1,000 cut. Fengshan said bitterly, and then coldly looked at Xu Yang on the side. Look at what I do. I don't have any intersection with him. I just heard something, Xu Yang quickly explained. You didn't see that guy even wanted to start. Then why are you in the same camp? Fengshan asked again. Xu Yang's complexion was a little embarrassed, and then he said with a serious face, I have no comment on this, but since that Yuyun dares to do something to me, then I will have him die under my gun. Fengshan nostril snorted, and then stopped speaking. In his opinion, even Xu Yang's all-out effort could not compare to Jian Wushuang's hand. Jian Wushuang slowly squatted down, looking at Yangxian in front of him, and said, I've been tired for so long, so it's time for a good sleep. Reluctantly opening his shriveled eyelids, Yangxian smiled reluctantly. Thank you, sir, it's time to get a good night's sleep. From the day I found my wife to the present, I haven't had a good night's sleep. Now I can finally sleep. What's the name of your sect? Jian Wushuang asked in a soft voice. This was exactly what he asked on a whim. It seemed that he was opening the dusty memory, and finally he slowly said, My lord, it is called Shangqing Pavilion. It is located in Qingju in a very distant heaven. The scenery is very good. The masters and mothers are very kind to me. It is a pity. After all, I won't see them for the last time. After speaking these last words, Yangxian finally fell, and the immortal body that had long been unable to support directly turned into a withered bone and dispersed with the wind. Jian Wushuang's heart moved slightly, and his calm state of mind seemed to remember the past. The girl who was reckless and courageous had walked out of Qingju, and followed him and ditching to the sky. She is called Zikingqi, and she is the daughter of the lord of the Shangqing Pavilion. And the dead Yangxian right now is also one of the 12 disciples in the Shangqing Pavilion. Everything seems to be such a coincidence, but it seems like in the dark. Jian Wushuang sighed secretly, and then saw a jade slip the size of a finger in the dry bone. He raised his hand and picked up the jade slip, only to see the words Shuhuan engraved on it. After several Chinese years, it was still fresh. Perhaps this jade is simply the identity of the dying immortal. When he was enduring the suffering, it must be the Shangqing Pavilion where he was trained and enlightened when he was young. Put the jade slip in your arms. Yu reads www.ukanshu. Jian Wushuang turned around and looked at the dilapidated hall in the deepest part of the Heishan Mountains, his eyes sharpened to the extreme. Boom! The hall was shattered, and even the entire mountain range couldn't bear the power, and collapsed. Headed by Jian Wushuang, Xu Yang and Fengshan bombarded either side with their full strength. Beast, get out for lousy and die. Fengshan burst into tears, a series of violent attacks, easily smashing any visible objects. Jian Wushuang held the invisible sword and walked towards the dark hall at the forefront step by step. In front of this dark hall, under the huge and towering black pine trees, there are more than a dozen broken immortal bodies stationed. Looking into the eyes, everywhere is full of death and desolation. Please remember the domain name of the book's first publication. Mobile version reading URL. Chapter 4906. Immediately afterwards, a series of sawbone cracks sounded. The broken immortal body guarding outside the temple gate moved at this moment. Without exception, they are all dead immortals, without their own consciousness, just like corpses. Click. The headed dead fairy seemed to have fallen for a long, long time, and almost only the fairy bones were left, and it could be said that there was no fighting power. Jian Wushuang walked in the forefront, and with a direct wave of his hand, he wiped out the dead immortal who dared to step forward, leaving no trace. But in an instant, all the more than 10 dead immortals disappeared. This huge temple, based on the infinite Black Mountain Range, is the center of this treacherous universe, and it is also the most deadly place. Feng Shan then stepped forward, guarded Jian Wushuang, rushed directly into the giant hall, and then began to wreak havoc. He smashed a few large holes on the roof of the temple, and a dim light came in, barely seeing the scene in the temple. The hall is old, and the ground and walls under the feet are covered by crimson blood veins, just like an azura field. And the blood tendons are like living creatures, creeping slowly. Something that pretends to be a ghost. Grandpa will kill you, Feng Shan said solemnly. Between the opening and closing of his palms, a giant cell-like power poured out and exploded directly in this hall. A bad premonition suddenly rose in Jian Wushuang's heart, but before he even had time to give aid, Feng Shan was in deep crisis. The sudden change, a total of tens of millions of blood veins, like a prey-smelling blood, all revived, and the sky was covered by the sun to catch it. Yanli was swallowed by countless blood tendons, and then he was entangled in blood tendons and dragged into the abyss. Jian Wushuang slashed out with a single sword, only severing thousands of blood veins, and ultimately failed to stop it. Without any hesitation, he flew directly to the depths of the giant hall. Xu Yang's heart also shuddered, and then he followed Jian Wushuang closely. He couldn't tell why he wanted to make this move, he just left by feeling. The huge hall was dilapidated, and there was an abyss in the deepest part of the sky, where even light could not penetrate into it. Numerous blood veins as thick as a real dragon entangled each other in the abyss, to the extreme. Jian Wushuang held an invisible sword, and Xuanhe divine marks flowed all over his body, making it impossible to approach any filth. This abyss seemed to have no end, as if at the other end of the heaven. Boom! The rubble splashed, and 2 blood tendons that were several times stronger than the real dragon were chopped to the ground, twisting frantically. Immediately afterwards, a figure with a god-patterned figure holding a long sword appeared, followed by Xu Yang, holding a silver spear. Under this abyss, there is a vast dojo. No light can shine here, it is very strange. In the center of this vast dojo, Jian Wushuang saw that a huge futon made of flesh and blood was slowly creeping. This huge futon is actually made up of dead immortals, and at a glance there are no fewer than hundreds of them. At the same time, on this futon, the black-robed Dian immortal Yuyun was sitting on it, with a haggard face staring at Jian Wushuang bitterly. This seat miscalculated, this seat should not lead the wolf into the room and drag you into my heaven, he said viciously. Jian Wushuang glanced at him obliquely and said coldly, "Stop talking nonsense, put him back, I will spare your life." Yuyun suddenly stood up from the futon, his collapsing eye sockets bursting with red light. "Are you really sure you will take me? I can kill you the first time, and naturally I can kill you the second time. Do you still want to try?" Jian Wushuang's eyes gradually became cold. "Let's try that seat today. If you win me, I will return him to you." Yuyun shouted loudly, his arms shook, and immediately a blood vein with a thickness of 1,000,000 feet emerged from the dark. And Fengshan's figure was firmly fixed at the top of the blood tendons, unable to move at all. Yuyun still wanted to speak, but Jian Wushuang obviously didn't want to talk nonsense, and directly lifted his sword towards him. He was shocked and hurriedly manipulated the infinite lifelessness to respond. "Catcher, catcher." The ground shattered, and suddenly huge claws protruded from the ground, all of them madly grabbing at Jian Wushuang. Upon seeing this, Xu Yang hurriedly picked up the silver spear in his hand to clear the way for him. Wushuang Kendo, Xingyihu Haijianyi, the first style. Star. The lofty and magnificent sword intent gathers in the front line, the momentum is like the sky, directly cut forward. The sword intent broke out completely, and countless orn pillars burst along the way, shattering the giant claws protruding from the ground. This sword is the sword with the highest burst of group damage and can easily wipe out the threat. Yu Yun was shocked, the sword intent that suffocated him struck again, and he was forced to shoot. Standing on the high futon, he put his hands together, and then suddenly opened, swallow. In an instant, the futon under his feet squirmed. All the overlapping dead immortals struggled painfully, all opened their mouths, forming a peculiar suction. Under this suction force, that sword intent was directly divided and eaten. Jian Wushuang frowned slightly, and he felt unusual. Xu Yang came behind him and said solemnly, "The futon sitting on Yu Yun has a problem and can swallow all damage." He nodded, not eager to do it. At this time, Fengshan, who was hung on the blood, yelled anxiously, "My lord, go quickly, don't stay here, there is a problem with this old thing." Without finishing a sentence, Yu Yun directly stretched out his hand to release a mass of blood and knocked him out. "It's really noisy." Then, Yu Yun gave a weird smile, and his figure suddenly disappeared in the air. Upon seeing this, Xu Yang's complexion changed drastically, and Chao Jian Wushuang leaned forward without a trace. Between Yangxian and Dianxian, it is like being separated by a moat, not to mention that Yu Yun is such an extremely tricky Dianxian. Yu reading www.yakenangshu. Comic can be said that as long as Yu Yun moves the killing mind, even though the sun is invincible in the same realm, it can only be honestly to die, let alone confront it. Regarding this, Xu Yang, who was naturally aloof, had no doubts, so he went directly to Jian Wushuang. This is also the realm of evolving immortals, even the enemy's evolving immortals, but now it gives him a great sense of security. This is the home of this seat. This seat is the eternal way of heaven. No one can hit me hard. Now, with a pious belief, become my nourishment, you are enough to make me break through again. As the voice of Yu Yun resounded in this abyss dojo, the huge futon composed of dead immortals also moved at this moment. Every dead fairy wailed in pain, as if they had suffered the most painful punishment before they fell completely. Endless death aura escaped in the center of this dojo, and then the huge futon moved, and all the dead immortals opened their blood-red eyes. Chapter 4907. Dead immortals are not enough to be fearful, they are not even tricky to develop immortals in the same state. Because in the final analysis, they are just the scum left by Yun Yun swallowing the fairy sauce, and they are slaves without any perception. But the power of the futon made up of so many dead immortals should not be underestimated. They wailed together, then soared into the air, flying towards Jian Wushuang. At the same time, an infinite force of suction converged from the four wilds, devouring everything madly. Even Jian Wushuang felt a little discomfort. This huge dead fairy futon is really a bit tricky, and he immediately released an ancestral technique to deal with it. The ancestral technique, the heavenly gate, is extremely sacred. The vast expanse of power burst out, and countless gods flew out from the heavenly gate, one after another, descending infinite magnificence. At this moment, all the dead immortals in the dead immortal futon raised their heads, and then opened their mouths to devour Yanli. Ling Jian Wushuang was a little surprised. This type of heavenly gate was so frightening that it was completely swallowed. At this point, the dead immortal futon was already extremely large, and wailed at him again. Xu Yang's complexion changed drastically, and he had already prepared to fight to the death. However, Jian Wushuang took a step ahead of him, and went straight forward, the invisible sword in his hand shining to the extreme. In the next moment, the incomparable sword intent illuminates the entire dojo under the abyss. An unremarkable sword pierced out, and only this sword was left in Jian Wushuang's calm eyes. The two collided, there was no shocking scene, and there was not even any loud noise. This unremarkable sword is an absolute sword, the strongest one, no one can stop it. The dead fairy futon, which was originally full of extremes, exploded, exploding countless pieces of limbs. Under this sword, the dead fairy futon dissipated. Xu Yangyuan opened his eyes and looked at Jian Wushuang's back in disbelief. A big question was born in his heart. The same is Yangxian, why is the difference so big? After beheading the dead immortal futon, Jian Wushuang went straight to Fengshan unabated, he wanted to save him. However, the sudden change, The ghost cloud that had disappeared, quietly appeared at this moment, looking at Jian Wushuang with a smile. "Get away!" he shouted sharply, and the long sword in his hand slashed directly towards Yu Yun. Wow! Under this sword, Yu Yun's figure shattered directly, and then turned into two. "Fool, you are just a trivial immortal, you want to kill me in my heaven in vain?" Jian Wushuang ignored him and continued to slash. With each of his slashes, Yu Yun's figure would shatter, but another one would fissure soon afterwards, and soon there were nearly 100 Yu Yun surrounding Jian Wushuang. "Danger, run!" Seeing this scene, Xu Yang reminded in shock. However, it was too late. Nearly 100 Yu Yun all grinned and opened their palms, making a fatal blow. That was a full blow from Dian Immortal, and the infinite beam of death energy blasted Jian Wushuang from all directions at this moment. Boom! The entire Earth's abyss was completely turbulent, and even Xu Yang couldn't stand firm here, only barely blew himself up. This slaying lasted for a long time, until everything was calm. Then, a body riddled with holes fell from the air and knelt on the ground. Divine blood, like a stream, flowed out of the broken body and infiltrated a large area of land. At this moment, Jian Wushuang, the immortal body were all shattered to the extreme. If he went further, I am afraid that all his immortal bodies would be broken. After all, he was still careless, still underestimating Daanxian's true strength. Even if Yu Yun is unbearable, he is a true Dian immortal, able to easily give Jian Wu double wounds. But Jian Wushuang still hasn't passed that hurdle after all. When Xu Yang saw this scene, his complexion was extremely solemn, and then he quickly recovered his calm, holding a silver spear directly into the air to face Yu Yun. "Huh! You little heavenly official dare to stop me?" Yu Yun looked at him coldly. Xu Yang snorted coldly. "Yu Yun, remember, now is fighting the sixth heaven realm, not the time for you to be presumptuous. Can you control this seat? You are just an eagle dog under the seat of young Master Hua. Dare you to teach this seat?" Yu Yun shouted sharply, and he took a step forward, and the infinite pressure swept over. Xu Yang gritted his teeth, resisting this coercive force firmly, and suddenly pointed his spear at him. "Yu Yun, don't go too far. What if this seat is too much? Believe it or not, this seat will kill you now, and young Master Hua will not attack me." Yu Yun smiled, and a huge shadow emerged from behind. The hatred in Xu Yang's eyes was abrupt. "Then look at how you scumbag hurt this seat." Fierce fighting broke out in the air again, but it was one-sided. Yu Yun is like a cat catching a mouse, playing Xu Yang between applause. The insurmountable gap between Dianxian and Yangxian made him take it easy. At this moment, Jian Wushuang was half kneeling on the ground, and the immortal body was recovering quickly, but it still took a while. He gritted his teeth. The broken fairy body began to give birth to granulation. Right here, an extremely weak but abrupt voice sounded from behind him. "You are in vain, he can't be killed at all." Jian Wushuang turned his head abruptly, and saw a dead fairy with only his head crawling towards him. "Don't worry, I'm different from them, I haven't completely died yet, I have the last bit of consciousness." The head of this dead fairy is indeed different, and there are a pair of crystal eyes in the socket. "I was one of the top repairers who had been tricked by him to come here earlier. Now they are all dead, but I am still alive. The reason why I still have the last trace of faith in living is because I have to inform the strong who can kill him about his weaknesses. Fortunately, I have waited." The head of this dead immortal came to Jian Wushuang's face, his eyes overflowing with expression. "What I know is that he does not have a body, but is in a ghost state, and all the offensives of the immortal against him can't completely kill him. But I know him completely. I have been enslaved by him, and I know his biggest secret. He doesn't have a body, but it is a phantom of a thing. I once saw him take out an ancient book, but now I think it must be his origin. If you can find that ancient book, you can completely destroy him." Jian Wushuang looked at him and asked after a moment, "Where is that ancient book?" "Under this dojo. It depends on whether you have destroyed the abilities here." The head slowly said, "Can you do it?" Chapter 4908. The immortal body has completely recovered, and the heavy damage that Yu Yun can inflict on him is extremely limited after all, even far from the usual. So Jian Wushuang recovered quickly. After listening to the Death Fairy's head, Jian Wushuang said again, "Can you tell me the specific location?" "Of course, that ancient book should be under you. I hope you can destroy it. This is the last thing I can tell." The dead fairy's head gradually collapsed, and finally turned into a handful of fly ash, disappearing. Jian Wushuang slowly got up, he watched the scene in the air, and then condensed an invisible sword in his palm. The next moment, he drew a sword towards the ground. Boom! The collapse from the depths of the earth resounded. With a sword 1,000,000 feet, the entire earth's core under the abyss was dug off by his sword. Yu Yun, who was about to slap Xu Yang with a palm, changed his face, and the next moment he went straight to Jian Wushuang. "Want to leave? I will never make you feel better even if you die today." Xu Yang was covered in blood, holding a silver spear in front of Yu Yun. "Trash things, you can't help yourself." Yu Yun was furious, and slapped him away directly. But then, a tall figure resembling a peak stopped in front of him again, spitting fiercely. "Old beast, there is also the level of Grandpa." Yu Yun was almost mad, facing Fengshan, directly releasing endless life. Fengshan and Shuyang only blocked his dozens of breath time, but it was the dozens of breath time that Jian Wushuang had won. Jian Wushuang almost dug the entire center of the earth, and under the deep and cold earth pole, a red light suddenly swept up, shining the entire Diyuan dojo. Yu Yun's face was like dead ashes, and instantly rushed to the red light. However, it was too late. Jian Wushuang reached out his hand into the red light and took out something. "No, do not want." He was terrified, but he dared not take a step forward. When the red light dissipated completely, a dilapidated ancient book fell into Jian Wushuang's hands. "Reverse the Death Sutra." On this whole ancient book, there are only these 4 weird and curious fonts, besides, there is nothing else. "Give it back to me and I will let you go," Yu Yun shouted in horror. Jian Wushuang ignored him and opened the first page of the ancient book in his hand. The red light circulates, and the picture of an ugly ghost engraved on each page of the painting comes into view. Yu Yun. Ghost. Could he be the ghost on the first page, he thought. However, Yu Yun couldn't wait any longer, he directly rushed towards Jian Wushuang. Jian Wushuang didn't hesitate anymore, he reached out his hand and tore off the first page of the Death Sutra. "Damn you!" Yu Yun was completely desperate, and his whole figure was instantly broken and clean, leaving no trace. At the same time, the endless death energy began to dissipate, and the entire Diyuan dojo began to collapse. Yu Yun's sudden death on the spot is simply unthinkable to the extreme. Everything happened so fast that even Jian Wushuang couldn't believe it. He just tore off the first page of this backward Death Sutra, and a Dayan immortal died like this. Jian Wushuang quickly recovered, looking at the page that was torn off by himself, only to realize that it had become a piece of yellow paper. Everything reversed too quickly. Yu Yun died suddenly on the spot, and the lifeless energy that supported this Diyuan Daochang also dissipated, and could no longer stay in Diyuan for a long time. Before he could think about what had happened, Jian Wushuang directly stuffed the ancient book into his arms, and then urged Fengshan to leave. "My lord, what should this guy do?" Fengshan wiped the nosebleed off his face and pointed to the almost non-human-shaped sun on the ground. Jian Wushuang did not speak. Saving this guy is equivalent to saving an enemy. But he didn't hesitate too much, he directly released Yanli to wrap it up, and then soared out of the abyss together. The endless death aura has dissipated, and the originally chaotic sky has returned to its original color. It's just that the earth is still yellow and dry, and it may take a long time to recover. As a Dayanxian's dojo, this heaven is covered with bones, and countless Dingxiu and Yangxian have fallen here. Jian Wushuang originally intended to destroy this heaven directly, but after thinking about it, he didn't do anything. Yu Yun has completely fallen, and there is no possibility of recovery. The energy contained in the Reverse Death Sutra is probably beyond imagination. Jian Wushuang didn't intend to study it immediately, he still had more important things to do. Standing on the sky, the sun at this moment has almost recovered. Facing Jian Wushuang, he arched his hands heavily. "Thank you for your life-saving grace, Xu Yang will not forget." Jian Wushuang waved his hand. "How is your recovery?" Xu Yang said, "It's not bad, already has the power to protect itself. Can you return to your own heaven?" Hearing this, Xu Yang didn't answer, and only said after a while, "Xu Yang has been defeated, and he no longer has the face to attack the six-day realm. He will immediately return to his own heaven and no longer set foot for 6 days. But before that, I will return to the six-day realm with you once, recall my subordinates, Yangxian, and no longer participate in this war." Jian Wushuang looked at him, somewhat puzzled. Xu Yang smiled bitterly. "The reason why I did this is actually to redeem some losses. I now understand a little bit. With you, the six-day realm will be hard to be destroyed." Hearing the words, he nodded. "Yes, after you follow me to the battlefield, the subordinates will be recalled and leave immediately. I will not stop them." Xu Yang nodded, and then as if he had made some kind of decision, he asked tentatively, "Can you tell me your name?" After blurting out this sentence, Xu Yang soon regretted it. You must know that the relationship between them is the enemy. You can't Shu. Com is simply a manifestation of ulterior motives. But Jian Wushuang didn't care about it. "Just call me Wushuang, this is my name. Fog Shuang." Xu Yang repeated it in his heart, then solemnly arched his hands. "Brother Wu, I've written it down. If we meet again in the future, I will definitely invite you to swig." Jian Wushuang waved his hand again. "I don't have to drink it, I just hope to see you next time, not on the battlefield." Fengshan on the side grinned. "Even if we meet on the battlefield, I won't be able to meet each other on the battlefield. Then I will be in front of the adults and beat you down." Xu Yang smiled bitterly. No one knew where they would meet next time, maybe it was really on the battlefield. Being involuntary is a true portrayal of being a great official. It has been a long time since Jian Wushuang was dragged into the fairy formation by Yuyun and strayed into this heaven. The most urgent thing right now is to return to the six-day battlefield to turn the tide. Chapter 4909. The entire void battlefield has been completely chaotic, and the war has spread to a large area of the sky except the six-day realm. Nearly 100 heavens have been destroyed in this battle. The boundless void is shattered, and Yanli mixed with the violent wind has almost turned this place into a purgatory. At this moment, the last two celestial formations were completely opened, and nearly 800 immortals besieged them for 6 days. Even void couldn't bear the impact of so many immortals, and was fragmented. They all crushed to one place, crazy to the extreme. But what can be seen is that these more than 800 immortals and countless Dingxiu all gathered in front of the six-day realm portal. No matter how hard it is to advance, it seems that they are caught in a fierce battle. Immortal evolving and batches of top repairers continued to fall, and the bones of immortals flowed miserably in the void, and then were crushed. In this catastrophe battle, there is the most dazzling figure. He has 10 wings on his back, and the color of each wing is different, releasing a terrible general trend. Every time he shot, he smashed the Yangxian who dared to go ahead into powder, and the entire six-day realm was almost protected by his own power. By his side, there were fewer than 20 Yangxians left. With 20 to 800, this is unimaginable. Gong Ziqian was also forced to join this battle, and almost all of the 100 Yangxians he brought with him died. He was stuck in this battle and couldn't get out of it. At this moment, he almost wanted to slap his previous self fiercely. He thought he made this decision wisely, but he didn't know that he was heading for a dead end. If it hadn't been for the last line of defense, which was the protection of the truth, I'm afraid they would have fallen for hundreds of times. There are only less than 20 eternal immortals left. Chuanqiu, Chen Qing, Kui Jing, Zhao Ting, Wei Liujia and others are already at the end of the battle. If they continue to fight like this, they will only have one end. All destroyed. There are more than 800 immortals, which is really terrible. You must know that even the most common immortals have the ability to destroy the heavens. They are all above the heavens, and they can even forge the existence of the heavens. Right now, they are gathered here, and no one can stop them. Daiking's life was damaged, and he used his own strength to resist the offensive of the 800 Yangxian, almost making him a little unable to support it. But he still persisted, persisting until that figure appeared. "A few of us, let's go, the six-day realm is no longer preserved." Gong Ziqian looked at Diqing and said in a trembled voice. Di Qing coldly glanced at him, and then continued to lower his unparalleled momentum. After swallowing his throat, young Master Qian didn't dare to speak anymore. He could feel the killing intent in Di Qing's eyes, and he didn't care about the identity of his emperor. Thinking of this, he gritted his teeth and fought hard again. With Jian Wushuang's disappearance, the entire battlefield has reached the most chaotic and disorderly state. The little emperor stood in the void in despair. He has been besieged by nearly 100 Yangxian, and it is difficult to escape. But the immortals who besieged him, no one dared to step forward, hesitating in their eyes. Every immortal who came to this six-day realm knew who this young man dressed in luxurious clothes with a handsome and gloomy face was. Because of this, no one dared to step forward. After all, he is the emperor's son under the seat of Zhen Wuyang. Holding a soft sword in his hand, his gaze slowly swept across all the immortals in front of him, as if he wanted to write them down. At this moment, the void in front of him quietly curled up with layers of ripples, and then a black robe appeared suddenly. As soon as this black robe appeared, an aura that was too strong to be inspected escaped. That is the breath of Dian Immortal. Then he slowly stepped forward, stretched out his hand to directly hold Xiao Dijun's neck, and lifted him up. The Sun Yang. The playful voice sounded from under the black robe, and then the hood was slowly pulled down, revealing an extremely old and skinny face. This extremely old Dian Immortal had no need to clean his face, and his eyes were muddy. Xiao Dijun looked at him coldly, without any expression. Then, Dian Xian slowly said, "When you are dying, do you have anything else to say? Only you are worthy to kill me. Do you dare to kill me?" Xiao Dijun gave a dark smile, his eyes full of madness. "Old man, why don't you dare?" He also smiled, and his empty right hand suddenly released its power, which directly blasted on Xiao Dijun's fairy body. The immortal body shattered, and the blood spewed out, and a hideous wound was directly blasted into his belly. "Hurry up. Old dog, you will do it again. I will see if you have the courage to do it again." There was no pain on Xiao Dijun's face, but he smiled grimly. "You don't kill me today, I will call you later. You have no way to survive, no way to die." The old Dian Xian turned his turbid eyes to look at him. "You can't die now, and you need all the dust to settle. Then I will come to kill you myself." After saying this, he directly reached out and threw him down into the void, and then his body disappeared. The battle continued, and more than 800 immortal evangelists and countless top repairers had already wiped out the remaining forces in the six-day realm. Even the truth is clear, it is no longer able to turn the tide. Together they are powerless. However, Di Qing clenched his teeth. His power of generative power was about to dry up, and when faced with the encirclement of more than 800 fairy, I am afraid that he might lose another true life. "Wushuang, where did you go?" His voice quickly spread to Chen Qing's ears. Chen Qing, who came back from Jian Wushuang, immediately said, "Brother Jian is going to destroy the immortal formation, but now it looks like, I am afraid that something has happened." "Impossible, Brother Jian will be fine, he will be back soon." Chun Chiu was blooded, but his tone was extremely firm. "A moment is a moment, and I will wait until Brother Jian comes back." Kui Jing gritted his teeth and said, "He has only entered the realm of immortals, his foundation is the most shallow, but he still persists." Di Qing didn't say much anymore. He also believed that Jian Wushuang would return soon, and the reason why he persisted until now was also waiting for Jian Wushuang. He shook the 10 wings behind him and lowered layers of golden light. Anyone who approached him would suffer severe damage, even if it was a fairy, but now, it is gradually fading. Just when Di Qing was about to call out the treasure, a strong premonition suddenly rose deep in his heart. Being able to walk out of the era when Zhen Wuyang became the emperor, his divine consciousness has been so powerful that he can feel the danger coming from any direction. At the next moment, Di Qing did not hesitate, he directly released all his power, and the 10 wings behind his back also closed at the same time, protecting his fairy body for the first time. Chapter 49:10. The void shook suddenly. All Yangxian and Ding Xiu felt the void suddenly sticky at this moment. It's like time has stagnated for a moment. Then, a black light that could tear the void through the entire void battlefield at an unimaginable speed, fiercely shot at the magnificent figure. As the heavens collapsed, the day withered. An extremely crisp cry resounded in the void battlefield. Dai King's treasures shattered directly, countless golden lights retreated from his immortal body, and the magnificent 10-party wings withered and shattered. All the immortals can be clearly seen, replaced by a huge wound at the heart of ditching immortal body. The ultimate pure golden blood gurgled out, and even the broken void was stained with color. Gong Ziqian, Chen Qing, Chuanqiu, Kui Jing, Wei Liujia, Zhao Ting and others were all face ashes at this moment, and even the few remaining eternal immortals and the few thousand Dingxiu were desperate. Every immortal Yang and even Dingxiu knew that the reason why they were able to persist until now was because they had a clear existence. Right now, Di Qing was hit hard, and everything finally came to an end. Ahem. He coughed out a ray of golden blood. Di Qing breathed and languid, his eyes began to tire, and then he could no longer hold it, and fell into the void. Chun Qiu was the first to react. He came to Di Qing in an instant, supported it, and took out a handful of Emperor Pin pills directly from his arms with one hand, and put them directly into Di Qing's mouth. "Don't resist, eat them all," Chuanqiu said with a trembling voice. The entrance of the Di Pin pill was directly transformed into a ray of light, which penetrated into his body and began to quickly repair the severely injured place. Di Qing, who had almost died, was able to continue his life, and his aura calmed down, but he was still in a state of uncertainty, and it seemed that he could die at any time. The shattered void battlefield fell silent, and more than 800 immortals walked towards them silently like mountains and seas about to fall. The unspeakable aura almost left the six-day realm on the verge of collapse. Immediately afterwards, an old black-robe figure appeared in front of the army of immortals who covered the sky. He walked slowly, satisfaction in his muddy eyes. The old man didn't expect that in this small void battlefield, there is actually a 9-rank Dayan immortal. What made the old man not even expecting was that the old man beheaded and killed a rank 9 Dayan immortal with his own power. When he said this, his muddy eyes were full of arrogance. This is indeed a kind of glory. He is only a mere rank 3 Dayan immortal, and he was able to kill a rank 9 Dayan immortal. This incident will be his most glorious battle. Chen Qing took a step forward slowly, looking at him with a gloomy expression. A shameless person would actually do a sneak attack. Although you are a Dayan, you are not as good as a beast. Hearing the words, the old Mai Taiyang flicked his fingers directly. In an instant, Chen Qing's complexion changed, and his right arm holding the sword was directly crushed into powder. "You are a little Yangxian, dare to clamor with this seat. No respect," he hummed coldly. Kui Jing stood up at the right time and looked at him proudly. The words were full of disdain. "I say something bad, you are only worthy of sneak attack. If you put it on the open face to fight, you can't get on the table at all. I don't know how many Huanyan old people who have not been angry. This time they are completely angry." He didn't expect that these ants-like guys would dare to swear against him. How he was not ashamed. Looking for death. Old Maid Dayan directly flicked his fingers. Kui Jing was hit hard, and the Kikiao's blood was gushing at the same time. "Today, you have one count, none of you can live." After he finished speaking, he clicked with his fingers, and Chuanqiu, Zhao Ting, Wei Liujia and others were all hit hard. The only Yangxian in the six-day realm, at this moment, no one can get up. Dayanxian's suppression of Yangxian was really terrible. He just moved his fingers and caused Yangxian to be hit hard. No Yangxian can stand up, and the door to the six-day realm is wide open. Old Maid Dayan had contempt in his eyes, and at the same time cast his gaze forward. He only needs to destroy all the six-day realm, and the task is completed. Just as he was about to destroy for 6 days, the sudden change occurred. Facing the army of immortals leaning like mountains and seas, a thin Dingxiu stepped out, then drew out the real sword hanging from his waist, and looked forward solemnly. Seeing such a scene, all Yangxians felt ridiculous, and even the old Dayanxian was astonished to the extreme. This is even a top repairer who has just reached the stage of entering Yang, dare to stop nearly 1,000 of Yangxian? You know, it is as simple as crushing an ant to kill a Yangxian at random. But he still did not dodge, and stood up resolutely. Holding the hilt in both hands, the sharp blade pointed forward. This ordinary-looking, thin-shaped dingxiu is Shu Jin. Seeing this ridiculous scene, the old Dian immortal seemed to be in interest, and he waved his hand directly, and suddenly the three top repairers who were also entering Yang flew out and stood in front of Shu Jin. Shu Jin took a deep breath, then stepped forward with a sword. 1 top repair and 3 top repairs, this is almost a suspenseless ending. But Shu Jin stood alone and resolutely stood up. He was unable to retreat, and at the same time he knew his fate. In the next moment, the 3 dingxiu set off at the same time, and several powerful training bursts from their hands, and then violently shot forward. The long sword pointed forward, Shu Jin seemed to have entered a certain ethereal state, and even her breath disappeared. All Yangtzeans watched this farce-like scene jokingly. But the expected result did not appear. Combining the strength of the 3 top repairs, when hitting the target, it actually broke every inch. A careful Xianxian noticed that the violent force training was not broken by itself, but was shattered by dense sword intent. That sword repair is not easy. The 3 dingxiu also noticed this change. But none of them took it seriously, and they all rushed towards Shu Jin. The entire spectrum of Liuyun grass sword style is composed of 9 styles, ranging from simple to complex. So far, only Jian Wushuang has cultivated to the ultimate. And Shu Jin, who is dull and extremely poor in control of Yang Li, has only practiced the 3rd style so far. How powerful can the 3-style Liuyun grass sword be? At this moment, Shu Jin had long forgotten all the crises. He had only the sword in his eyes, and at the same time, he deduced kendo over and over again in his divine consciousness. Liuyun grass sword, 1st style. Shuxing. This is the most basic sword that lays the sword intent of Liuyun Kaojian in the whole spectrum, starting from simple to complex. True sword probing. The simplest crosscut is the meaning of staring. Void fluctuations. Sword intent is brilliant. Chapter 49:11. The 3 top repairers who flew past felt bad at the same time. They backed away in a hurry, but they were still half a step late. Laugh. The sound resounded like tearing brocade and silk, and the void was opened with a long and narrow gap. The 3 backing Ding Xiu all looked at him solemnly. At this moment, on the same place on their cheeks, there was a scarlet bloodline, and blood dripping from the wound. An ordinary crosscut, causing all 3 dingxiu to suffer. They all felt the palpitations of the sword intent, but they still couldn't avoid it. If they didn't stop in time, the consequences would not end there. Fucking, you are looking for death. One of the youngest, Ding Xiu, was furious and rushed directly with a touch of blood on his face. Shu Jin raised his brows, and faced this surging top repair. He had no fear. Flowing cloud grass sword, the 2nd style. Consecutive months. The true sword slashed straight, and riding on the remaining power of the star restraint, the coldest sword burst out. That Ding Xiu smiled sullenly, as if he had been prepared. His arms shook, and he directly covered a layer of force barrier around his body to deal with it. The next moment, the 2 collided, and Shu Jin, who was thin, flew upside down, and even the real sword in his hand almost fell off. The dingxiu stood frozen in place, laughing loudly. Cough cough. Shu Jin slowly straightened up, wiped the blood from the corner of her mouth, and looked at him calmly. When a shocking scene appeared, Ding Xiu, who was still laughing out loud, suddenly shut up, his expression dignified, and he looked at his heart in disbelief. I saw that his heart was penetrated by a sword, and his origin turned into a mottled star, which quickly overflowed. No, it's impossible. How could my origin be damaged? He was terrified, and then fell completely. All this happened in an instant, and it was just a single fight that eliminated a top repair of the same realm. With such combat power, there is no top repair to underestimate. The remaining 2 top shaves were extremely dignified, and it was obvious that their companions had fallen, giving them a great deal of pressure. The 2 looked at each other, then acted at the same time, and flew directly towards Shu Jin, bursting out their strongest blow. The void oscillates, and the 2 majestic forces reach. Shu Jin took a deep breath again. With the 2nd form of the flowing cloud grass sword, he killed a top repairer at the same level, and the third form that was not yet proficient would probably not be able to perform to the extreme. Although he thought so, he still released the third formula. Go to the water. The third style of going to the water is actually a style that combines the two styles of sword intent and uses them. Although it seems simple, it is introverted, and if you are not thoroughly familiar with the first two styles of sword intent, you can't play at all. As soon as the sword intent came to the water, the entire void centered on Shu Jin seemed to become a flood of spring water. The two top repairers who had gone all out, when they stepped into this place, they were like drowning, and they were suddenly tied to them, and they couldn't even release their strength. It was in this short instant that Shu Jin was so small and thin that he was holding a real sword, like a heaven in charge of judgment, and harvested it. The void is silent. At this moment, all the top repairers who saw this scene, even the fairy cultivating, are all bright. Even the old Dian immortal with muddy eyes looked at Shu Jin at the right time. Nothing else, because this sword is simple and clear, but it is amazing to the extreme, so that all viewers have the heart to learn. The origins were shattered one after another, and the two top repairers who were bound by the sword of going to the water had all no life at this time, like a stone statue, sinking into the abyss of void. Shu Jin retracted the long sword soaked in blood, and he gasped for breath. Obviously, after completely releasing these three sword intents, he no longer has the power to fight. But even so, his expression is still peaceful, as if he doesn't care about everything. 3 swords killed 3 Ding Xiu in the same realm. He was already very satisfied, and at the same time recalled the figure of the draped clothes in his divine consciousness. I'm afraid that from then on, he will no longer be able to comprehend the exquisiteness of the flowing cloud and grass sword style in the second half of the spectrum. Even the gang wind fell silent in the void, silent. Immediately afterwards, the voice of the old Dian immortal sounded, "The junior, tell me the kendo you are practicing, and I will let you make a living and let you practice under my seat, how about?" As soon as these words came out, all the fairy cultivators were in an uproar, and if a third-ranked great elder fairy favored him, his path of cultivation in the future would be extremely bright. This is just a guy who is a top repairer. If he can, breaking through the immortal is just around the corner, and for a while, many immortals are hot. Shu Jin laughed, he seemed extremely happy, and his clear voice resounded in the void. However, in the next moment, he returned to normal, with a bit of disdain in his clear eyes. "Only you are worthy. All the immortals are sluggish. Can't believe that a small top repairer will give up such a generous condition, and even speak insults to the immortal." Just when all Yangxian thought that the old Dianxian would be furious, he didn't expect him to have any expressions, as if the insult was not that. Since you don't want to tell the kendo that you are practicing, the old man is not reluctant. You tell me the name of the creator of the kendo. How about the old man also letting you make a living? The old maid Yangxian spoke slowly, with a soft tone. Shu Jin smiled coldly, glanced at him obliquely, and directly retracted the real sword in his sheath. "My master's name taboo, pass to your ears. It is dirty. My master's name taboo. Even if the disciple is stupid, he will never do such a thing. He is ready to die calmly." Not waiting for the old Dian immortal to get angry, a voice like coming from above the 9 heavens rang out. "Since you want to know my name so much, why don't I tell you and listen to it myself?" All the immortals are horrified, they all look behind them like an enemy. I saw the silent shattered void, a figure dressed as a black ranger walking slowly. There was an incomparable divine pattern flowing all over his body, exuding an indescribable momentum that made Yangxian unable to look directly at him. And behind him, 2 figures followed closely. One of the bald giants, who was as strong as a sacred peak, was gearing up, as if only waiting for a command, then let go. The other figure is holding a silver spear, full of arrogance, full of invincible aura. All Yangxian watched this scene with bated breath. Yes, it's Gentian official. In the 6-day realm, the few immortals left behind shouted at the same time, their eyes all flushed. "Sword Heaven official! Jian Heaven official!" At this moment, all the top repairs left in the 6-day realm screamed spontaneously. Chapter 49:12. That's a reaction that will only appear after the desperate situation has returned to life. Chun Chiu held his palm tightly, already unable to restrain the excitement in his heart. Big Brother Jian, it is Big Brother Jian who is back. Kui Jing vigorously raised his arms and shouted excitedly. Wei Liujia let out a sigh of relief, only to feel that the hideous wounds on his body no longer hurt. Young Master Chen, who had been waiting for an opportunity to escape, saw this scene, and his heart was inexplicably settled. But he was still ready to escape, because he didn't think that a little fairy would be able to save this defeat. The young man holding the true sword in front of the six-day realm, the disdain and coldness in his eyes disappeared at this moment, replaced by respect and expectation. Seeing this scene, the old Dayan immortal, who was still a little surprised, suddenly sneered. Such a small fairy goddess is just something that can be crushed to death at hand. Now that rank 9 Dayan immortal sheltering the six-day realm was killed by him, he believed that there was no other immortal on the entire battlefield that could resist. Thinking of this, he lazily stretched out a finger and gave orders, crush them. Only this time, a considerable part of Yangxian did not leave, all looking at each other. Because they noticed that their great heavenly official was actually standing behind the mysterious figure at this moment. Why don't you do it yet? Old Maid Dayan said angrily, his voice seemed to tear the void again. But then, among the more than 800 fairy tales, there are nearly 300 fairy tales at this moment, all looking forward, solemnly nodding. Behind Jian Wushuang, the Shuyang, wearing a flowing cloud silver armor and holding a silver gun, took a step forward and said in a condensed voice, "Anyone who listens to my son will leave the battlefield immediately." The sound moved in the void, and ripples were shocked. After hearing this order, the 300 Yangxians rushed towards Shuyang without hesitation. Suddenly, there were only more than 400 left of the mighty army of immortals, nearly half of it. Shuyang, you wantonly. The old maid Dayan was furious. In his opinion, Shuyang was still just an ant. Since it is an ant, on this battlefield, he must obey him. But right now, at a critical point, Shuyang unexpectedly withdrew his troops temporarily. How could this not make him angry? Shuyang glanced at him calmly, and then said loudly, "The urgent order is here and I have to leave. I won't accompany you in this battle." Hearing this, the old man Dayan was so angry that he couldn't add to his anger. "I see you dare to go." After he finished speaking, he directly waved his arms, and suddenly the Yanli Guanghua burst out of his palm like a chain, and went straight to those Yangxian bundles. The next moment, the sudden change occurred. Jian Wushuang's figure quietly blocked the retreating Yangxian, and then he pointed out. In an instant, 1,000,000 strands of huagong burst into existence, and violently collided. The two collided, and the shattered void was once again torn into an abyss. The extremely magnificent Yanli light illuminates the entire void, and Yangxian, who is a little closer, retreats thousands of feet. Old Maid Dayanxian's cloudy eyes stared to the fullest at this moment. He couldn't believe that a small Yangxian could withstand his angry blow. After Hua Mang dispersed, Jian Wushuang, who had not damaged the corners of his clothes, glanced at him calmly, then turned to look at Shuyang. Shuyang took a deep breath and solemnly arched his hand in front of him. "Brother Wu, treasure." After he finished speaking, he took more than 300 Yangxian straight to the immortal formation, and soon disappeared. At this point, there were only more than 400 Yangxian and 1 rank 3 Dayanxian left on the entire void battlefield. On the battlefield, a large area was suddenly vacated, and Yangxian and Ding Xiu, who had survived in the six-day realm, were secretly relieved. The originally restless Sun Qian calmed down and looked at Jian Wushuang with doubts in his eyes. He didn't understand. With the appearance of that guy, the war seemed to be reversing. No, it's impossible. A mere fairy wants to reverse the situation? It's just nonsense. Gong Ziqian shook his head in denial, and then he seemed to think of something. His eyes widened suddenly, full of shock. Then he hurriedly approached Chen Qing, who was closest to him, and asked nervously, "Your Sword Heaven official, is that the Sword Heaven official who killed Chang Duoling with his own power?" Chen Qing glanced at him, unconsciously lifted the jade belt around his waist, and said arrogantly, "That is, what a small one is often more than one order. Then you are optimistic about how Jian Tianguan can turn the tide." Young Master Qian slowly spit out a murky breath, and he also began to faintly look forward to it. What kind of monster it is to be able to shake Dian Immortal's sword heaven official with the power of immortality. The void changed from turbulence back to dead silence, and all Yangxian stared at Jian Wushuang. But Jian Wushuang's gaze crossed them, staring at the old Dian Immortal. The familiar scene seems to have begun again. The battle with Chang Duoling was also in this scene. The only thing that changed was that the old Dian Immortal now seemed to have been immersed in the third turn Dian Immortal for a long time. Its unfathomable extent seems to be much deeper than Chang Duoling. A battle with him is inevitable, and Jian Wushuang has already felt it tricky. Here is another guy who is going to die, no matter what. This seat will completely slaughter the six-day realm today to realize the future troubles. The old Tianxian said in a deep voice, and at the same time a scepter was condensed in his palm, and he slapped the void hard. All the gods will be obliterated for 6 days, and no one will be left. The Yangxian army seemed to be impatient for a long time, and after getting the order, they hurried to the 6-day realm. At this moment, Jian Wushuang's cold voice resounded, "Those who don't want to die, go back on the same path now." After he finished his words, a number of sword intent suddenly appeared in his hand, and he swept forward. Several of the fastest Yangxians were crushed directly into Xianyuan and turned into powder. But this is not enough to stop the Yangxian army, nearly 400 Yangxian, at this moment, like a dark cloud covering the sky and the sun, descending for 6 days. Looking back at the heavy wounds behind him, Ditching and the others, who was already hard to fight, raised his eyebrows slightly, and then he took a step forward resolutely. He was alone facing the army of immortals, every immortal in the 6 heavens realm. Every Ding Xiu just held his palm at this moment. With one's own strength, can you really resist this blow like a mountain and sea? The next moment, the solitary Jian Wushuang, his whole body suddenly increased with divine marks, and his whole figure was like composed of hundreds of millions of sword intent, brilliant and magnificent to the extreme. The entire void began to vibrate violently. After seeing this scene, Yangxian, who participated in that battle, was all shocked and excited to the point of indescribable. You're tuning in to the Celestial War YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.